Welcome one, welcome all to this Season 12, Episode 35 of the Ubuntu podcast. It's Thursday the 5th of December, and this evening we're going to discuss the news and events and some tech headlines. I'm joined by Alan.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm great, thank you very much.
Do you think we should explain this is the penultimate episode of Season 12?
Well, you just did. Well done.
So, penultimate for the non-English speakers means this is almost the end. Almost the end. The last one, nearly.
The last one ever?
Well, who knows? We need to go away, have a curry with Mark, and see if we're going to do this again for an episode. Sorry, Season 13. Could be the second but last one ever. Anyway, let's not dwell on that. What have you been up to since we last spoke?
I've had some weird conversations about Thinkpads.
I listened to a podcast you were on talking about Thinkpads. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, yeah, I did do that. I did a brunch with Brent about all kinds of things, but mostly about Thinkpads. And that was fun. And shortly afterwards, I got tagged on a thread on Twitter by a friend of the show, John the Nice Guy.
Oh, yeah.
He tagged me because someone asked on Twitter, who I didn't follow, so I didn't see this, asked if there were any ThinkPad collectors or enthusiasts in the UK who might be interested in going on a BBC documentary or something. And John the Nice Guy tagged me, sounds like Popey, which was quite amusing and very kind. And I replied to the guy and said, I've only got 9 ThinkPads. I'm not sure if I qualify as a collector. Yeah, that was fun. And then the conversation carried on, and a friend of mine, Taras, pointed the original poster at Reddit and said, there's a community on Reddit of ThinkPad enthusiasts. You might want to ask over there. And I agree, because I like our ThinkPad. It's a good place. And they did. I went to bed and I woke up the next morning having been pinged on all kinds of places, multiple Telegram channels. Hey, have you seen this Reddit thread? And it was a thread from the production company of making a TV program. And sure enough, they posted in our ThinkPad and put their email address at the bottom. And I was laying in bed reading this first thing in the morning. And I thought, well, I might as well drop them an email. So I highlighted the email address in Reddit and I switched to my email client, and I was about to compose a new email to this person. And there was an email from that person in my inbox already. They'd already hunted me down, thanks to various internet recommendations. Yeah. So I had a chat with them, and we talked about why people collect ThinkPads and why people like ThinkPads over other models of laptops, and why it has a kind of almost cult status. And perhaps they might in the future want to film someone. Might be me, might be my ThinkPads, could be someone else, could be some other ThinkPads. They might want to film this kind of stuff. But it was quite interesting having a conversation with them. So we shall see.
It sounds like this is kind of like a bucket list item for you, right? Being interviewed by the BBC about your collection of ThinkPads, albeit only 9.
To be fair, there are people out there who are way more enthusiastic and way more dedicated collectors than I am, who have a much more diverse and expansive collection than I do. So I don't wish to put myself forward as the internet authority on ThinkPads. But the fact that I've been on a podcast this month and I gave a talk at OggCamp about it kind of makes you think I might know a little bit.
Yeah.
We will see. We will see. It might amount to nothing, but you never know.
You would think that a production company who's looking to interview people about ThinkPads is probably looking for somebody that can be, a little bit articulate and present themselves and their collection of ThinkPads.
Yeah, I hope they find someone.
So I was tidying up my office over the last few days, and I found a ThinkPad I didn't even know I had.
What? Was it holding a door shut or something? Or was it propping up a table under a table leg?
No. So I've got these blue crates on shelves that have all manner of stuff in them, for just convenient dump stuff in and forget about it. And I found a ThinkPad X201. with all the accoutrements as well, fully upgraded. So I've clearly given this some love in the past. It's got the maximum amount of memory. It's got SSDs replaced. It's got Wi-Fi chips replaced. It's got the docking station and a refreshed but genuine ThinkPad battery. Anyway, I only have 6 ThinkPads, not 9. Mind you, one of my ThinkPads is core boot enabled. I have an X200 that's a core boot enabled ThinkPad.
But the thing that they were most interested in is because the documentary is about the area of Scotland where ThinkPads used to be manufactured. They're only really interested in people who have ThinkPads manufactured in Greenock in Scotland. And if it's from the Lenovo era, so from like 2005 onwards, then it probably wasn't. It was probably made in either China or Singapore. So they're really only interested in the proper crusty Windows 95, Windows 98 type.
Oh, listen to you ThinkPad snob.
The fact that there could be a ThinkPad snob. Yes. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I am.
I can hear my internal Mark telling us that we've been waffling about ThinkPads for far too long, so let's get on with the rest of the show. Now it's time for some community news and event. And the first bit of news that I spotted this week is rather exciting. And that's that Canonical have announced Ubuntu Pro for Amazon Web Services.
What's this? I had no idea about this until I saw the blog post.
Some people might be aware of like ESM, the extended security maintenance, right? There's a whole bunch of extra stuff that we make available in Ubuntu that you can buy into in order to extend your security coverage and things like that. So Ubuntu Pro, it's not a separate build of Ubuntu. It simply enables the commercial capabilities that Canonical provides to enterprise customers. So it's available for Ubuntu 14.04, 16.04 and 18.04, so the current LTSs. And it provides 10 years of package updates and security maintenance, and also includes, and this is the new bit, all critical high and medium CVEs from the top 1,000 packages in the Universe archive as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
So normally the Universe archive is seen as community, in inverted commas, community maintained, as in there's nobody who's paid to keep on top of security updates. Someone might, but it's best endeavor, right?
That's exactly right. So Joe McManus, who's leads all things security at Ubuntu, they have undertaken an effort where they've identified what the top 1,000 packages in the Universe archive are, and then made sure that all of the CVEs in those top 1,000 packages are addressed, and have even done automated and manual security audits of those packages. And they've identified a few new CVEs, raised those and fixed them as well. So by and large, because Ubuntu is bigger in the cloud than it is on the desktop, those top 1,000 packages tend to be the stuff that people are deploying when they, spin up instances in the cloud. So it's, your Redises of the world and MongoDB and all of that kind of stuff.
Stuff that's not in main, not on the ISO, but it's stuff people rely on.
So it's all of that good stuff. And then it's also kernel live patch. And there's a whole bunch of compliance stuff as well. So if you care about, FIPS or FedRAMP or PCI or HIPAA and ISO compliance, then there's also some additional enablement there as well. And this is all available under the moniker Ubuntu Pro through the AWS Marketplace.
Coolio. I'm sure if you're the kind of person who runs Ubuntu in AWS, this would be important to you.
So what did you see in the news this week?
Our friends over in Elementary Land have put out a new release. Typically, their new releases for major releases are built on the LTS of Ubuntu, which came out, the most recent one, 1804, came out, well, nearly 2 years ago, 18 months ago or so. And so this is a point release for them, which is a roll-up of all the updates since then, but also has a few new features as well. And I whacked it on my trusty ThinkPad X220, and it's very nice. It's very pretty. It's very shiny. They have certainly achieved their goal of having consistency across their applications, and the theming is quite robust across all the applications. They've added a new application, which I think is called onboarding, which is like a welcome screen. It's like your first run wizard and just goes through a few things, asking if you want to turn a few features on. But it's quite nice in that it's just a really small window in the middle of the screen and has very minimal text on it. It's not like a giant screen with loads of buttons and loads of options. It's just, here's some information, here are some links, click next. Here's some more information. Do you want to turn this option on? Click next. It's a really elegant way to do a first run wizard. It doesn't punch you in the face. It feels really tight. I like it. They've got some added performance improvements to things like App Center. Apparently it's faster, and they've added some more categories. They've added better HDMI support, but I don't see that on any of my machines because I don't, as you know, I don't have high DPI.
When I was reading through their release notes, and this was, and I completely appreciate where this is coming from. I think Elementary set out on their high DPI journey around the same time that Mate Desktop did. And we've exchanged some notes along the way. And it's remarkable that we both thought we'd done our job about 2 years ago. And yet here we are 2 years later, still both refining high DPI implementation. Turns out that's harder than you think.
There's a bunch of updates to various applications, and they've also added an application called Sideload, which I think we've mentioned previously, which is this thing that enables you to supplement the curated applications that appear in App Center with external, for want of a better word, third-party applications that may be provided via Flatpak repos like FlatHub and other places. And it pops up a warning to suggest that, you know, you're adding a package from outside the curated marketplace, which is not a lot different than the dialogue you get when you add a PPA to an Ubuntu system. It's a little bit more friendly. Some people would consider it being a bit more harsh, but I think that's just because it's new. But other than that, yeah, it's really nice. The typical very verbose and very richly detailed blog post from Cassidy is available. We'll link to it from the show notes. Worth a look if you're interested in taking a look at other Linux distros.
I admire the effort that Cassidy puts into all of their communication and release notes. It's something that I've always taken seriously. And I think not all end users care about that stuff, but there's definitely a percentage of end users that want that kind of information and appreciate the hard work and effort that goes into presenting that.
But it's not just end users who consume that, because if you think about journalists, they want a single source of truth that they can get release notes from that detail everything they need to know and a bunch of screenshots, so that when they're turning that into a blog post or a podcast episode or whatever it might be, they have a single reference that they can go to. I think this is something we don't do very well. We've lamented this in the past on the show, that our release notes are not as beautiful as either Ubuntu Mate or the Elementary ones. And I think we are working to improve that. But yeah, well done to Elementary on a new release.
As I was reading through their release notes, I noticed a little hat tip there to the fact that they've got improved hardware support, and they acknowledge that they've leveraging the hardware enablement stack that Canonical publishes for the LTS releases, which was lovely to see.
Nice. What else is new?
Well, Linux Mint, another popular derivative of Ubuntu, has announced its 19.3 beta. This one's codenamed, is it Trisha?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So they're aiming for a Christmas release. So this is...
Oh, it's not out yet.
It's not out. This is the beta. So it is available as a beta, and they're aiming for final release around Christmas time, which is lovely. It's a nice present for all the Linux Mint users out there.
Mm.
So there's 3 significant app changes. So they've ushered in Celluloid, which is formerly known as GNOME MPV, to replace their X player. I think they were watching very carefully what Ubuntu Mate did there. I'm just going to take credit for that. And they've used Gnote to replace Tomboy. I was astonished to see that they were still shipping Tomboy.
Yeah, I am astonished by that as well, because I don't know where they get it from, because I remember it being purged from Ubuntu with extreme prejudice by people who shall not be named, who were somewhat mono haters. So I'm kind of surprised, but I mean, I was a massive fan of Tomboy. I think it's a fantastic application, but there are other alternatives. I think Gnote is effectively a rewrite of Tomboy.
It's a C++ implementation of Tomboy, essentially, yes.
Yeah.
And Tomboy was implemented in Mono, which is now known as like C#. And here's controversial. I think, the sky is falling because Linux Mint have replaced GIMP with Drawing, which...
They've removed GIMP from the default install. It's the end of the world. It really is.
Wasn't this the rhetoric that was circulating when Ubuntu...
Oh, God, yeah. Back in 2010 or whenever it was, we removed GIMP from the ISO because we realised that not everyone needs it. And most people, all they want to do with a picture is rotate it or crop it, and that's about it. And they maybe draw a bit of annotation over the top of it, but... Yeah, most people don't need GIMP, but if they do, it's in the store. So interesting that they've gone down that road, I guess.
And for precisely the reasons that you cite, actually, that Drawing is perfectly serviceable for, basic rotation and cropping and resizing tasks, which is what most people use GIMP for. And they've got a slew of improvements around Bluetooth, and they've added the hardware detection tool to their ISO image menus. So if you boot off the ISO...
What on earth is that?
It's quite cool, actually. So you boot off the ISO, and one of the options is hardware detection, and it does a complete system enumeration and shows you everything about your system, all of the components and peripherals and... the gubbins that's inside your computer in glorious detail.
Is this like Device Manager on Windows?
Yeah, but think Ncurse's interface rather than...
Oh, okay.
So it's, it's a thing that you boot into off the ISO image. And they've got a revised version of their logo, and they've updated the Plymouth and boot menus accordingly. And then because of, all the work that goes into Cinnamon and Mate and XFCE, then they've got all of that new stuff available from those projects as well.
It's interesting how there's 2 pretty popular Linux distributions that are built upon what's done in Ubuntu, and they go in somewhat different directions, but they both have the same base. They both rely on the work that Canonical and the wider Ubuntu community has done to build Ubuntu in order to build what they build. And they both have super passionate user bases and communities built entirely around their projects that are entirely separate from our community. It's bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, they're in a good position where they're able to innovate on top of Ubuntu. Maybe we should talk about at some point, what goes into making Ubuntu.
How the sausage is made. What a good idea.
Yeah? Okay, then.
Next up, the Lubuntu team have kicked off their wallpaper contest for the next release of Lubuntu, which is, or will be, 2004 LTS, the focal fossa. They've set some guidelines. So if you want to submit a wallpaper that could feature for a number of years on a Lubuntu install near you, or even far away from you, then you need to submit your own work, and be licensed under Creative Commons by share alike. They've got a minimum resolution, which is surprisingly high. You'd think Ubuntu would be 640 by 480, but no, I kid.
You're a bad man.
I know, I'm joking. But no, I was going to say, have you added too many zeros on these numbers? But no, it's 20. Sorry, Simon. It's 2560 by 1600 minimum resolution. I'm just picturing a wallpaper that's 256 by 160 now. That would be brilliant.
It's ultra wide.
Ultra wide, low pixel retro wallpapers. Yeah, if someone could submit one that's 256 by 160 scaled up by 10 times, that'd be hilarious.
No, if you do the division, it's 256 by 16. That's the...
No, it's not. You divide by 10. Simple maths, Martin. And submissions need to be in by February the 25th, 2020. Late homework will not be tolerated, I'm told. But yeah, there's all kinds of details on their website. We'll link to that from the show notes. But yeah, if you want to submit a picture that you've taken that might feature on someone's wallpaper, the wallpapers always feature in the marketing around a release. So it's an opportunity to get your image out there.
So I saw on Nate Graham's blog that there's some work being happening in KDE to better support GTK applications, particularly those that use header bars or client-side decorations. Vlad Zordini has added full support for GTK frame extents to Quinn, which is the KDE window manager. And this basically means that GTK applications now integrate pretty much, they look sort of native in the KDE Plasma environment now.
They do. It looks really good.
It does.
Just looking at the screenshot in the bug report, you wouldn't know that was a GTK application.
No, this was my thought. I think they've done a terrific job here, and it extends beyond just CSD and header bars. They've also implemented full support for Windows shadows and also the resize areas. So, some people call this fuzzy grab or invisible window borders, but, all of that stuff works as well. So they're due to ship this in KDE Plasma 518 LTS. And I think that's timely as a new LTS is just around the corner for Ubuntu.
That's really good to see. I'm really, really pleased to see that because, you don't want applications to stand out like a sore thumb on, what alternative desktop environment that you've chosen to run. And that looks super tasteful. I'm really impressed by that. You wouldn't know that was not a KDE application.
Yep. Well done, all involved. And also, we'll have a link to the blog in question, and it goes far deeper than just this one thing. So there's a whole slew of improvements to KDE in there. So if you love a bit of KDE Plasma, then go and have a look, and you'll find out all of the new stuff that's happening in KDE.
Yes, indeed. Next up, I spotted a post on an open source security mailing list by Andy Lutomersky, sounds about right. Luto at kernel.org, that's probably easier. Lamenting the amount of support that i386 or x8632 is getting on Linux.
Is it precisely zero?
Well, I'm sure there are some people who have fondness for i386, 32-bit Intel. But what that doesn't translate into is people working on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's getting to the point where people are going to have to realize that 32-bit Intel is going to become a legacy. It's going to become an old architecture that we don't use anymore. And I know some of you are shouting at me, telling me, I've been using 64-bit Linux for many years. i386 is dead to me. Yes, I agree with you, but there are some people out there who cling on to their crusty old i386 only laptops, like me, and want to be able to run Linux on it. And the problem is there aren't enough developers with working native 32-bit hardware that supports or doesn't support the necessary bits and pieces in order to be able to test this stuff. And so the post is fairly short, but it's worth a look.
There's some interesting quotes in there as well.
Yes. Such as?
Well, there was one that stood out to me. It says there is essentially no upstream development resources dedicated to x86-32 Linux. And then they go on to say, to those of you who are actually wanting to support x86-32, please either consider stopping supporting it or finding and paying someone to give it serious upstream attention. And then they went on to explain that that person that you find also needs to, have an affinity and a love for, old style, 32-bit Intel instruction sets and what have you.
It's a shame, but at some point it needs to die off and we need to move on. And I appreciate that that's frustrating for some people who still want to be able to use their old crusty machines or old not so crusty machines. But the fact remains, someone out there has to do the work. And if you're not the person doing the work and you're not paying someone else to do the work, how are you making support for this old system any better? Indeed.
And just to be clear, this is actually like running a 32-bit kernel rather than running 32-bit multi-art binaries on a 64-bit system. This is, actually running an old 32-bit kernel. Now, in the interests of time, we're going to skip over our news about fake date util versions discovered in PyPy and jump straight ahead to our event. FOSDEM 2020 is happening on the 1st to 2nd of February 2020 in Brussels, Belgium. You went last year, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Did I? Yes, I did. Yes, I gave a lightning talk and...
You certainly did.
Yes, it was most enjoyable. I'm not going this year, but I understand a whole bunch of people from Canonical are going.
Yes, I've seen that there are people from the desktop team and the foundations team and the LexD team are going to FOSDEM. And for those that aren't familiar, FOSDEM is sort of the leading free and open source conference in Europe. It's a free event for software developers to meet, share ideas and collaborate. So there's a slew of talks and a whole set of rooms that are dedicated to a topic. So if there's something that you want to work on and contribute to, there's these rooms set up where you can go and meet like-minded people and work on stuff for a whole day. And now it's time for some tech news. I spotted this week that Mozilla has launched their free Firefox VPN service as a beta.
Ooh.
Yeah, kind of. I was a little bit disappointed. So they're hoping to leverage the trust of the Firefox brand in order to get people using its VPN service. And I think that's wise. I think they're very well positioned to, have that trust. People put that trust in their organization and their offerings. But at the moment, the free browser level protection is only available in America. So that was a bit disappointing. I had to use a VPN service in order to subscribe to it.
Irony. Okay.
Yeah. And it's currently capped at 12 hours per month.
12 hours a month?
Yes, 12 hours a month.
I use Firefox 12 hours a day.
Right. So somewhat limited. That said, they're working towards a fully paid service, and that will be $4.99 or equivalent in your currency. And currently, Windows 10 is supported in 30 or so countries. And you can have 5 devices in your account. And then Linux support is in the coming soon category, along with Android, iOS, Chromebook, and macOS.
So it's basically, this is reselling Cloudflare stuff?
I really think so. So I use the Cloudflare VPN on my phone, which is the 11111 app.
I think it's 1111.
1111. Okay, too many ones, but you get the idea. But the branding, the color scheme of the Firefox VPN service is identical to the Cloudflare app on Android. So,
well, I mean, it even says in the terms and conditions, our partner for the browser protection is Cloudflare.
Yeah, but they've clearly got some, collaborative branding and all the rest of it. So they've got this lovely, rainbow branding. So I'm just like, well, I can buy the Cloudflare service now on my phone.
But you're not supporting Firefox by doing that.
Well, am I not? I don't know if I am or not, because it seems so similar.
Well, no, I mean, if you buy it direct from Cloudflare, you're not supporting Firefox. Whereas if you buy it through Firefox, I imagine they get a slice.
I imagine you're probably right, but I'm not certain. Anyway, it's a VPN service from Mozilla. I do wish them well, and I look forward to them extending this service to more geographies.
Yep. Next up, oh my gosh, get ready for this. There's a lyric publishing website called Genius, and they're suing Google and another company called Lyric Find.
Okay.
For $50 million for stealing and publishing lyrics from their site. So the way it works is people do a search online for the lyrics to a popular song, and a bunch of results are returned, and people click the link and go to those websites to see the lyrics. Alternatively, Google have deals with lyrics sites where they consume that content and then they present the lyrics directly in the Google results page, which is good for users because they get to see the lyrics right there immediately below the search box. But it's bad for all those websites who are not the ones being used by Google, because they get pushed down the screen and nobody ever sees them. Because as soon as you've got a result in an info box in Google, why would you bother scrolling down? And the Genius people are quite literal geniuses. They figured out that Google were somehow getting content from their site without agreement. And the way that they did this was that they watermarked the lyrics, and they can't just put the wrong words in lyrics. So what they did was they changed specific apostrophes within the lyrics, because there are lots of apostrophes in lyrics because people contract words in it. But they changed specific apostrophes, like the second one and the third one and the fifth one and the 15th one. But they did it in such a way that if you took the list of apostrophes and turned them into dots and dashes, it spelled out a word in Morse code.
Awesome.
And the word they spelled out was red-handed.
Oh, even more awesome. This is fantastic.
So the idea behind this was, if those like different curly apostrophes appeared in the Google search results in their info box, then they knew confidently that the data was somehow being scraped or obtained from their website.
Right.
So they approach Google, and Google are like, nah, we don't do that. We don't scrape people's website. It's nothing to do with us. We have partners, trusted partners. It's, we trust them and we'll investigate. And Genius weren't happy with any of the replies they got from Google.
Yeah, it sounds unsatisfactory.
Right. After a while, the Google search, the info boxes no longer had the curly apostrophes in. So you might think, okay, well, they fixed it. And they hadn't actually fixed it. What someone had done is run a script that had turned all the curly apostrophes back into normal apostrophes. And so it didn't look like they were watermarked anymore. So Genius took it to the next level. They then changed some of the spaces in the lyrics to non-printing special spaces, Unicode characters that look like spaces but aren't.
This is Alt 255, right?
That kind of thing, yes. And this also was spelling out something in Morse code. And sure enough, those made their way into the Google info boxes. So they were definitely still getting their content, probably via a third party from Genius, because you could spot these non-blank spaces. It's just brilliant.
Yes.
And I found this via one of my favorite YouTube channels, Leonard French, everyone's favorite copyright attorney. He put a video out yesterday about this. I would strongly recommend, because the look on his face when he discovers this whole thing, it's great. It's totally worth watching Leonard French's breakdown of the lawsuit. I'd highly recommend it. But what it highlights is this whole, people stealing your stuff and the innovative ways you can prove that someone has copied digital data with interesting watermarks. I thought it was super interesting.
This is a fascinating story, and I am going to go and learn more about this after the fact. But it's also very irritating because Google's Content ID is powered by the fact that, people claim they own copyright over things. And here is Google. It may not be them, but they're responsible for their partnerships, flagrantly not honouring the same system that they penalise people for. I mean, I'm not going to give anything away, but you and I have a private YouTube channel, and we uploaded something to a private channel that isn't seen by anyone other than you and I, and we got a content ID strike on it, and it was completely bogus.
It's ludicrous. Yeah. And I mean, to be serious, the Genius people have material damages because they've been pushed down off the front screen. Nobody goes to their site anymore because people just see the info box. So it's a serious issue when Google present your content as effectively as theirs on their site. Anyway, I thought it was interesting. You should go and watch Leonard French's video.
So very briefly, the last story I saw is that Firewatch developers' next game is on hold after they have been acquired by Valve.
Firewatch? Firewatch is that some people would call walking simulator.
That is how some people call it. Now, this is a game that I have in my Steam library, and actually it's brilliant. It's more like a graphic novel. A graphical novel, not a graphic novel. Anyway, they pitched a new game called In the Valley of Gods in 2017, which is now officially on hold as a Valve project. It was previously slated to be released in 2019. So the studio behind this, or previously were known as Campo Santo, there was some sort of internet outcry about a month ago when all of the Campo Santo ex-developers removed mention of In the Valley of Gods from their Twitter profiles after the announcement of Half-Life Alyx, which we talked about a couple of episodes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it turns out that the Campo Santo team have joined other projects at Valve, including Half-Life Alyx and Dota Underworlds, and also are working on Steam itself. And there were a couple of interesting quotes from Jake Rodkin, who was a Campo Santo co-founder. And he says that, with our experience in first-person adventure genres, it's pretty relevant. So, they've clearly been sort of, directed at Half-Life Alyx because of the success they've had in this genre in the past.
Or maybe there are more VR games coming from Valve.
Maybe. Well, it would make sense, right? Because Valve have invested heavily in VR as a platform.
It's not unheard of for Valve to purchase a software development studio and then release a completely different game that's based on something that studio did. Like Portal, the original Portal game came from a freeware game called Narbacular Drop.
That trips off the tongue.
Yeah, and the studio were purchased, and I say studio, the developers joined Valve, and sometime later Portal came out, but it had exactly the same mechanic as Portal. So yeah, perhaps those people who developed Firewatch may be developing something else, and the work that they've done so far could be on some other future Valve project that we may not see for many years. We may not. But yeah, one of the other things that I thought that Jake said that was interesting, he says, you hear a lot about how at Valve, you can work on what you want. And it turns out that's true. And there's a lot of work available. So this is how some of them started lending a hand in Half-Life Alyx and got involved in other projects as a result. Anyway, that's the news roundup.
We know you've got a Facebook account, so stop sharing cat photos for a moment and like or share our posts so your friends and family can find the Ubuntu podcast.
And that is all for episode 35 of season 12. Next week, we're going to have a discussion about what it takes to create a distro. Is that right?
Yes, I think we should.
Good for us. And this was the penultimate episode, which means next week will be the very last episode. So we would like to take this opportunity to say many thanks to bitfolk.com for providing our VPS for this year and the 11 years that preceded it. And if you're jonesing for some Ubuntu podcast whilst we're not around, then you can head to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ubuntu podcast.